Welcome to Hannah's Heart.
So Hannah, she's just one of the women who did struggle with infertility in the Bible.
No matter who we are, we can be inspired by the fact that Hannah took her pain to God, and God heard her and was with her.
So when she was praying at the temple, she had been weeping and not eating, and her lips were moving, but her eyes were closed, and the priest was like, "Hey, why are you drunk at the temple?"
It can become an obsession when you want a child so deeply.
And desiring that baby and to be a mama. Every holiday, every Mother's Day.
This is not a show that's going to promise you a certain outcome, but this is a show that says, however God answers your cry, we know that He's enough.
Hey, I'm Ann, and you're joining us today on Hannah's Heart on American Family Radio, and thank you for coming on and giving us a listen, or if you're watching, thanks for being here. If you've listened before, you know that we are a radio show podcast that a lot of times focuses on infertility, miscarriage, child loss, that kind of thing. So a lot of hard things. But our goal is to be there with you as you're walking through those times. And we've also grown to cover adoption, foster care, singleness, those kind of things, just how your life might look a lot different than what you pictured right now. But if you allow God, how He can always make beauty from ashes. And so we hope to walk along with you during that time. Today I have on a special guest. He has been on multiple times before.
2 other times, I think.
Yes, but multiple shows, because those were all divided up into
right.
different shows. You have come on. First of all, you're my pastor, Brother Matt.
Yeah.
Brother Matt Powell is here today. He has come on. He and his wife have come on before to share their own personal stories of loss, and then you actually came on to share. I was not back at work yet after my son passed away, but you came on then to share what you did at his funeral and just encouragement during that time. And so I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here again.
Well, it's a blessing always to be with you.
Well, I consider it a blessing and an honor to have you here again, and that you are willing to share your story of Judah. And I know we're going to talk about Judah some today, so we can get into that in just a minute. But I asked you to come on. I think I texted you. Goodness, I guess just at the time of this recording, it was Monday. So
Right.
2 days ago?
Yeah, that's right.
But I texted you because of your sermon this past Sunday. And at the time of this recording, Charlie Kirk passed away a week ago today. And I needed what you said Sunday, the sermon that you gave, the personal stories that you gave, because of how heavy those days following his death, and really even, before that, the girl passing away, getting stabbed on the train, and the school shooting, and honestly, just multiple other stories here lately of like, my goodness, like, is it safe to go to the grocery store, and so you use the word, like, it feels like things are just kind of closing in on you, and so you just had such a good sermon on Sunday to remind us how good God is, and because of the evil that we are around, that's how we can notice just how good God is still.
Yeah. So I think the word that you just used, heaviness, describes like how I have felt and processed just the news around us. Now, we all acknowledge that. I mean, you and I are talking in a podcast conversation right now that is going to connect with people, all around the country and beyond, I'm sure. And because of technology, we're connected to conversations and life events with people that in different times, it wouldn't be there.
Right.
And so because of that, there is bad news travels fast. There's a constant bombardment of bad news, it seems. And then also we live in an age of algorithms where whatever platform or whatever, device that you're using, there is actually a computer working to give you more of whatever you're slowing down and looking at. Yeah. So if you stop to read a very sad story, you're going to see more sad stories.
And more. Yeah.
And that's not an inherently evil thing. It's just technology. And so because of that, it feels at times that evil is just so heavy and all around us, and the walls are closing in on what is good and beautiful and right. And I do think, though, with the events like Charlie Kirk's assassination and some other events that you mentioned, I think technology or not, those events are so big, bad, and sad and evil. We would have heard about those even in previous times. But I think the hardest thing for me is seeing the division in our country, not even being able to come into agreement with what evil really is.
Right. That this is actually a sad thing that has happened.
Right. And that, I think, has been the most unsettling thing. Certainly death, murder, that is extremely unsettling and heartbreaking. But then there actually be divided opinion on, is that bad or is that a good thing? And that's what's so heavy, because it's almost like that there's a segment of our culture or just as all of us, there's not an agreement on what is even good and what is evil.
Yeah, that's
and
very
I think
true.
that's what's so stinking scary to me.
Yeah.
As a dad that has a daughter in a college, she's at Mississippi State University, and I also have a kindergartner.
Yeah.
And I've got little kids coming up in the world, and I've got a bunch of kids in between there. I've 6 in total. You mentioned Judah; he did pass away, so we have 5 other children outside of Judah, and of course Judah is with the Lord. And I've told you before, Judah's with the Lord, and he is literally the only child I have that I don't worry about.
That's what she said,
Which
is so true.
I never worry about him, but these other ones are going to put me in an early grave, just because of just the hard fact of growing up in thus and such a time. And then also there are it's just scary thoughts when you think about the world that they're going to inherit from us.
Right.
And when you see things like that, it's just heavy. So heavy is the word to describe what drove that sermon. Because I was in a series on the life of King David, and I normally don't break from a series.
Right, yeah.
But Sunday it was, hey, I think now is the time that it was appropriate that I would do that. And I just talked about the whole message was on goodness and good and what is it, because it felt like we just needed a reminder about what's good, and then as a part of that, also what is evil. And anyway, so that's where that came from.
I feel like evil, at least the way I grew up, can be so scary to talk about. And it's not a fun thing to acknowledge that it's around all the time, you know? And so I think you said Sunday that your wife, Andrea, you know, said something to the effect of, Matt, like, if people don't consider the unborn life sacred, why would they consider, you know, a 31-year-old's life?
Right. When you see someone, you know, dancing on someone's grave.
Yeah.
Even people that, I mean, my goodness, there are people that I have vehement political disagreement with.
Sure.
And, you know, vehement disagreement about, you know, what is good, beautiful, and right, and all those things. But the whole dancing on the grave and saying it's a good thing that somebody died, that is, it is not from the Father.
Right.
It is not from the Father. I actually last night spoke at Mississippi State University at their Baptist Student Union, and we talked about that a little bit, about the whole idea of the justice of God that was revealed in his word in the Old Testament, like in Exodus 21, when it says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for a foot. We hear that and we're like, oh my gosh, it's so harsh. But actually in the ancient world, that's proportional justice. That means if, you know, someone breaks someone's arm, you cannot take their life for that. It has to be, if you break someone's arm, the most pain that they can be inflicted is what they actually caused.
Okay.
Because in the ancient world, there were other law systems like Hammurabi's Code in Babylon that was, hey, you steal something, what's the death penalty?
Oh.
And that's unjust. And so God's law comes along, and God's law brings justice, by saying, no, there are limits to what the law can do in punishment, because the fundamental difference between God's law and ancient law codes like Hammurabi is the Bible in Genesis chapter 1 has this amazing statement that we are created in the image of God. That there is something of God in each one of us. And that's not just if you're a believer.
Sure, right.
Everyone is created in the image of God. And what's interesting is right next to that passage in an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. In fact, so I don't misquote it, I'm going to pull it up right now. This is Exodus 21. In Exodus 21 and verse number 22. This is the context. This is the first time that whole eye for eye, tooth for tooth thing is mentioned. It's actually talking about a woman who has an untimely birth because she's endured violence. It says, when men strive together and hit a pregnant woman so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there is harm, you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and stripe for stripe. Wow. So the context of that is if two men get in a fight and in the collateral damage, a woman who is carrying a baby is injured, and either the woman or the baby is injured in any way, whatever injury is sustained by the woman or the child, the person who caused that is morally responsible for the damage. And what's interesting and unique with that, there is another law in Hammurabi's code that mimics this one. And if the baby dies, it's a financial penalty of 10 shekels. And if the woman dies, the man who injured her, his daughter has to be put to death. It's a crazy, unjust thing that shows there was no value placed on the baby as being an actual person. Right. And I just point all of this stuff out because in the ancient world, when God's law was given, the imago Dei, the image of God in people, is what was so revolutionary in the ancient world. It didn't matter your status, your ethnicity, your language, your religion. The Bible teaches in Genesis 1:26-28 that everyone is created in the image of God, and that begins at conception, babies in the womb. And you can see that right here in eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And if you cannot value it there, to Andrea's point, as you were saying, you're not going to value it anywhere. Yeah. If you can't value a baby's life, all life is expendable. And that's what's just so heartbreaking. I think that's heavy. Yeah. I mean, it's so heavy.
It's so heavy.
And so anyway, that's kind of how we've tried to process that.
Well, Matt, you talked about on Sunday, you also shared some personal stories of, I guess you would say, the effect of our broken world after Judah died. Do you mind sharing about that?
Yeah. So when things are so heavy, things so heavy that they take your breath away, and thinking about the loss of your son, the loss of my son, and then in our life, shortly thereafter, losing my son in 18 months, we found out we were expecting another baby, and 4 days later, my wife's diagnosed with cancer. And it was the kind of cancer that was going to be fed by the hormones that increase during pregnancy. And it was nightmare. And it was just absolute nightmare. And then there were a couple of other things that were hard too, but those were the two heaviest things that we had to deal with. And I remember, actually, this was right after Judah died. When Judah died, the people at our church very graciously gave us time away to grieve. And we went to Gatlinburg to just grieve and weep together. And this is right after Judah had died. And I had my first night terror. And I'd never had a night terror before. But what happened is we had cried ourselves to sleep that night because we're grieving the loss of our son. And in a very vivid nightmare, I believed that Andrea had stopped breathing. And so me waking up from the nightmare in a confused state,
Yeah.
I'd jump over on top of her to perform CPR. And well,
she was okay.
She was definitely okay. Of course, that was quite the shock of like, what are you doing? But I remember both of us just crying after that, of just
the realization
how broken we are as people because of the heaviness of the suffering that we faced. And that actually continued. What I shared on Sunday is that I never had night terrors before Judah's death and Andrea's cancer. But once those bad things happen, once you staring the hell on earth in the face, it has changed me, and because of that, I began to have night terrors. Not every night; it's typically about 4 or 5 a year, but they're extremely scary. I wake up and I'm confused, and it's always something in common. And the common thread is one of my children is dying, or my wife is dying, or someone is here that is going to cause hurt or pain on my children or harm. Of course, none of that's ever true,
right?
But
it feels so
it
true.
feels so real. Yeah. And in fact, the last one that I had, by God's grace, it's actually been since last November, so they've actually died down. But it was last Thanksgiving where my family was in town, and I had a very vivid nightmare that someone was there to hurt my children. And I remember waking up, and there was this little red light in front of me in the distance, and in the confusion of waking up out of sleep and everything, I jumped over and I grabbed something, not knowing what it was, and then threw it over to the side and the wall. Well, I actually ripped our TV off of the wall and threw the TV over and put a hole in the wall and yelling, "No, you're not going to take my kids."
And Andrea's in the room.
And
so I'm sure that scares her.
Oh, God, well, she has the same thing every time. She's always like, "It's not real, darling. It's okay." So she's so soft and tender.
It breaks my heart for you because, would you agree that there's like an innocence that gets taken away from you?
Yes, that's
after
exactly
experiencing such loss, and I think that's also why. I guess I'm saying Charlie just because that's like the most recent thing here lately, but knowing that his wife's life, his children's life, is never going to be the same again. Mm-hmm. We've experienced that. All of a sudden, in a minute, your life never goes back to the way it was. And so it's just the past few days, I've almost grieved more for them because I guess I'm no judge of his salvation. Charlie, I guess I would assume he, from what he shared about his beliefs.
He professed Christ.
Yes. And so I'm not sad for him. I'm sad for who he left behind because I know what it's like to be.
And there's also a sadness here too, because when you think about it, when John Micah passed, when Judah passed, both of our families in those seasons, there was an outpouring of compassion and love. And I'm sure there has been an outpouring for this situation as well. We've seen that. But what you and I didn't experience is people dancing on the grave of our children,
and it being an intentional thing.
Yes, it was just in our case, it was an inexplicable. My son had a cardiac arrhythmia and just dropped dead in the front yard. In y'all's case, it was the stillbirth. Is that?
Well, it was considered. He had cardiac arrest.
Oh, cardiac. Oh,
yeah.
And those are awful. I can't imagine another layer on top of that another human being took the life of one of my children, and God forbid. And so you see that stuff. It's like, this is so heavy, and knowing how this has affected me, and it's affected Andrea. And then another thing is the awful reality of Judah's death is the innocence and the simplicity of the childhood that it literally ripped out of the hands of my daughters. Mm-hmm. Especially my older daughter, Ashlyn, who's now at State, and my second oldest, AK. The other ones remember Judah as we talk about him,
Sure.
but they remember it vividly.
Yeah.
Like very, very, very vividly. So Ashlyn had a friend over that day when Judah died. We didn't know Judah was going to die. She had a friend over that day, and Judah was pestering Ashlyn, just as little brothers do. And she's like, here, quit bothering me, quit bothering me. She had no idea that her brother was about to die. Ashlyn's a wonderful big sister. AK was playing in the yard with him. They were, playing hide and go seek in the front yard. And then she was actually right there when he stopped breathing.
So their lives changed.
They have been altered
Yeah.
by that. They can't unexperience that.
Yeah.
And when you see that and tying it into what we were talking about Sunday, like we teach our children that God is good. The song, little chorus that's been around forever, God is so good, God is so good. There's the newer song that's been out for probably a decade now, the goodness of God.
Yeah.
My family loves those songs, and God is good. Like there is, he's been so good to us in the person of Christ. He's given us life, forgiveness, peace amidst storms, and all of these things. But still looking at the heavy stuff can take your breath away.
Yeah.
And for me, processing that good, when I think about what y'all have experienced or what we've seen in the news or what we've experienced as a human being's perspective, well, I can think of a better way to deal with these stories as opposed to somebody getting shot and killed or stabbed to death on a train or little boys having cardiac arrests, or like in my mind, if I'm God, let's just not do those things. That would be better. And I want to say two things to that here as we kind of close this thought, is when we look at the Bible, so much of what the Bible talks about is rooted in the earliest chapters of the Bible. And there are three kinds of goodness that are talked about at the beginning of the Bible. The first one is just the good that God does. It's in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3. God made the light and he saw the light was good. Whatever God does, it's good.
It's good.
But then there's also Genesis 1:31, which is after God looked upon all that he had made, he saw that it was very good. But in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, there's one more kind of good that we're told about from God in these opening chapters of the Bible, is that when God has made the man but not yet the woman, and he looks at this and he says, well, this is not good. And I point that out because God doesn't do evil, but sometimes God does do not good things. And the not good things that God does are simply incomplete goodnesses.
Yeah.
Because the not good is the anticipation of, it's not good that the man's alone, but the man's about not to be alone.
Right.
And the not good is there so you can appreciate the very good that's coming, and that there's a greater glory in that very good, having first tasted something that's not good. So I still believe God doesn't do evil.
Yeah.
God doesn't cause evil like that. That's a conversation for a different time on how the Bible talks about that. But the Bible is clear that every good and perfect gift comes from above,
That's right.
from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. That's James 1:17. God does good all the time. And when we see something that's not good, we can have the confidence that it's just incomplete. And that at some point, in some way, it's Romans 8:28, we know that God causes all things to work together for good to them that love God. I don't know how this square gets circled. I just know that it is. And when this heavy stuff, the only place I can go and receive true peace is to the Bible, is to Christ, because this is the only place in the world that I know of where this problem is solved. Everybody has this problem. Suffering is not unique to Christianity. Evil is not unique to Christianity. Everybody has this problem, and it's only in Christianity in the person of Christ, who himself endured suffering, that we actually see a future resolution to it.
That's so good. The time went by really, really fast. But I'm so glad that you got to the point of talking about the different goodnesses, because I thought that was so interesting, and I've never heard it put that way until this past Sunday, when you're like, he actually says it's not good, but it's just because we're not yet to that completion of goodness. I hope anyone who listened today felt some sort of encouragement after what has felt like a very heavy few weeks. And I hope it gives you encouragement to still talk about the Lord, to still talk to your friends and family, and whatever that looks like for you, to still feel comfortable to share the gospel, because he's still worth talking about. He's still worth proclaiming. And I hope that we can continue on from here and talk about him some more. You guys, thanks for listening to Hannah's Heart, and we will see you back next week.